two white police officers unjustifiably stopped a black woman. What began as a routine check quickly turned into humiliation until Keanu Reeves stepped in. His response will leave no one indifferent. Friends, let us know in the comments under what conditions you watch this video. In the background, while working, or during lunch. Also, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow another emotional story will be waiting for you. Sunday morning in the city breathed peace. The sun cast soft reflections on cafe windows and glinted off the shiny hoods of cars rolling slowly over the cobblestones. People had stepped out of their apartments to soak in a little warmth, sip some coffee, and take a walk. The air carried the scent of pastries, new possibilities, and lightness. Ava walked past a cafe, holding a paper cup of latte. She was beautiful, confident, with perfect posture and a radiant smile. Her dark skin contrasted with her snow-white coat. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, and stylish glasses framed her eyes. She wasn't talking to anyone, just occasionally smiling at passers-by, slipping off her headphones to catch the sounds of the world. Today was a day for the soul, and that's exactly what she wanted, to be alone with herself. "Hey, miss." A voice, sharp and loud, like it split the air, stopped her in her tracks. Ava turned around. Two police officers stood a few steps away. One, tall, with a square jaw, dark sunglasses, and a firm voice, stepped forward. The other, younger and silent, stood slightly behind, as if he didn't want to be there. "Yes, officers," she asked, keeping calm, though her heart clenched in her chest. "ID, please. We have a few questions." "What's the reason?" She tilted her head, trying to figure out if this was a mistake or something more serious. "Standard check. We've had reports of suspicious activity." He glanced sideways at her bag. "Is that your bag?" "Your information is incorrect. I'm just taking a walk." "And yes, of course, that's my bag." Her voice was steady, but irritation flickered in her eyes. The younger officer remained silent, his gaze drifting over her, the sidewalk, the sky. He didn't intervene. "Can we see your ID?" the older one insisted. "You haven't given me a reason. I haven't broken any law." She gripped her coffee tighter, like a shield. "It's just a check," his voice unchanged, though now tinged with impatience. "Cooperate, and it'll only take a minute." Her eyes narrowed. She understood what this was. It wasn't a check. It was something familiar, something she had felt as a child, when her mother made her dress properly. Be quiet, polite, cautious, because we can't do what they do. "You stopped me just because of how I look." Her voice didn't rise, but it deepened. "Are you hiding something?" the officer asked, and for the first time, true hostility entered his tone. "I'm hiding my dignity, so I don't lose it in a moment like this," she replied. The words hung in the air. Silence tightened like the calm before a storm. A few meters away, on a bench, sat a man in jeans and a dark blazer. He was flipping through the pages of an old book, eyes fixed on the scene. It was Keanu Reeves. Calm, unnoticed, observing. His fingers tightened slightly on the page. He saw everything. And he knew. The moment was coming when silence would no longer be an option. The senior officer circled Ava, his gaze sliding over her body, not with interest, but with assessment. He nodded again toward the bag. "Is that bag really yours?" he asked, his tone no longer hiding the skepticism. Ava exhaled slightly, tired, but composed. "Yes, I bought it. It belongs to me." The officer raised an eyebrow, pretending surprise. "It just doesn't quite look like." He paused, as if choosing softer words. "Like something we usually see around this neighborhood." Ava held his gaze. "And what do you usually see in this neighborhood, officer?" The younger cop shifted his gaze between them but remained silent. He seemed uncomfortable, but not brave enough to intervene. "I'm just saying," the older one continued. Sometimes, things are off. People pretend to be something they're not. It's not an insult, just caution. Are you suggesting I'm a fraud? Ava's voice trembled, not from fear, but from the anger pulsing beneath her ribs. I'm just asking questions. He stepped closer. Your behavior, it's a little odd. You're nervous? That can come off as suspicious. I'm nervous because I'm standing on a sidewalk being stopped by two armed men for no reason. Why should I feel safe? Her voice was rising, her eyes welling with tears. You stopped me because of how I look, didn't you? The senior officer was no longer smiling. It was clear he hadn't expected her to speak so directly. Passers-by began to glance over. Some looked away and quickened their pace. Others pretended not to notice. But the atmosphere was tightening, like a string pulled taut. Finally, the younger officer spoke. Maybe that's enough? She's just... I said, standard check, the older one cut him off. Don't interfere. And at that moment, the book on the bench closed. Keanu Reeves rose slowly, set the book beside him, and began walking toward Ava. His steps were quiet, almost weightless, but carried something inevitable. The sunlight reflected in his eyes, and his hands held nothing, except a calmness more powerful than any weapon. Excuse me, he said, approaching. I noticed something happening here. Is everything all right, miss? The senior cop whipped around. His face tightened like a drawn wire. He didn't recognize the man right away. But something in the stranger's posture made him shift his tone. Ava inhaled sharply, as if she could breathe again. Something new appeared in her eyes. Hope. I'm glad you came over, she said. Because no, everything is not all right. And the world held its breath. Silence. A pause. And after that, everything would change. Keanu took a step closer. There was no aggression in his voice, only a calm confidence that instantly drew the space around him into focus. I'm sorry, he repeated, this time louder. I saw that you stopped her without any apparent reason. Can you explain what's going on? The senior cop instantly dropped his mask of false politeness. Who are you? He barked, trying to reassert control. Step away. Don't interfere with our work. Keanu didn't even blink. I'm a citizen, he replied evenly. And I have every right to ask why another citizen, who's done nothing wrong, is being stopped and questioned in such a demeaning way. The younger officer dropped his gaze again, but this time not out of indifference. His brows furrowed slightly, and he took a step to the side, as if trying to distance himself from the situation. Ava looked at Keanu like she was breathing fresh air for the first time. In her eyes were surprise, gratitude, and something deeper, admiration mixed with emotional disorientation. She hadn't expected someone, a stranger even, to stand beside her. Keanu moved half a step closer. Are you recording this? He asked calmly. Is your body cam on? If so, great. Because I'd like it documented that I am requesting the name and badge number of every officer involved in this incident. You don't have that right, the senior officer snapped, though his voice now had a crack in it. State law says otherwise, Keanu replied, still calm, locking eyes with him. If you have nothing to hide, then there's nothing to fear. Right? His words sliced through the moment like a blade. People nearby, who had been shyly passing by, began to stop. A man pulled out his phone and started recording. A woman with a stroller raised her eyebrows and stepped aside to get a better view. A group of teens on nearby steps had already turned their cameras toward the scene. Ava stood straighter. She was no longer under pressure. She was standing beside a protector. Someone whose presence alone shifted the atmosphere. The younger officer coughed and glanced at his partner. Maybe we did go too far. But the senior waved him off, rubbing his jaw nervously. He didn't know what to do. His power was slipping away in real time. Control was vanishing, and with it, the feeling of impunity. "I'm just asking for names," Keanu repeated. "That's not a threat. That's the law." The sun had dipped lower, and the shadows were growing. But what grew fastest was the tension. It gripped the street, the hearts of the onlookers, and the officer himself, whose once commanding voice was beginning to fracture. And in that silence, between gazes and anticipation, for the first time in a long while, truth began to pierce through fear. The senior officer looked around again, but this time with discomfort, not defiance. He could feel the weight, not just of Keanu's presence, but of dozens of eyes locked on him. Phones were pointed from every direction. The world was watching now, and this was no longer just a routine check. "Listen," he finally said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a sharp motion. "We maybe overreacted a bit, just doing our job. The area's tense. We had to check." His voice had changed. Gone was the commanding tone he used earlier. Ava said nothing. She stood tall, chin lifted. Her silence spoke louder than any words. The younger officer finally raised his eyes and sighed. "Maybe we really did get it wrong. She was just walking. No signs of threat." The senior grimaced but didn't argue. With a gesture, he motioned for his partner to back off. "All right, the check's over. You're free to go." Ava stepped forward. The trembling in her fingers finally reached her voice, but it wasn't a voice of weakness. It was a voice of dignity. "I deserve respect, not because he stepped in for me, but because I am a human being." Her eyes were shining. She looked at Keanu, but she wasn't speaking just to him. She spoke to everyone watching, everyone who had stayed silent for too long. Keanu nodded. "That's exactly why I stepped in," he said, "because humanity doesn't have a look, a color, or a rank. It either exists, or it doesn't." At first, there was silence. Then a single clap. One of the teens by the steps began applauding. Then another. And another. Someone shouted, "That's right!" Others simply stood with wide eyes, not in fear anymore, but in gratitude. The air, which had just moments before been heavy with oppression, felt lighter. It was as if the poison had been drawn out. People looked at Ava differently now. She was no longer a stranger. She had become a symbol. And beside her stood a man who hadn't stayed silent. The senior cop cast one last glance at the crowd, at the cameras, at the eyes burning into him. Be sure to share your impressions of the story in the comments, and write what conclusions you have drawn after listening to it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I wish you all a good mood, and see you in the new video tomorrow.